The critical question in the West today is, can freedom survive where virtue isn't able to flourish? Hi, I'm Chuck Colson with this week's 2-Minute Warning. I was born a long time ago, in 1931, at the tail end of the Prohibition era in the United States. So it was over long before I was old enough to take my first drink. Now, most people today, looking back at the rise of bootlegging and gangsters like Al Capone, would say that the attempt by organizations like the Women's Christian Temperance Union or the Anti-Saloon League to outlaw the sale and manufacture of alcohol, while perhaps well-intended, was a colossal failure in social engineering. Well, I have to admit, if I'd been involved in the process back then, I would have been a prohibitionist. Not that I'm a prude about drinking. All things from God are good so long as we don't abuse them. But I would have supported prohibition based on the simple fact that alcohol was destroying our society. The social consequences, which no one disputes, were enormous. Massive numbers of people were reporting to work drunk. As a result, there were terrible accidents on the job. And the tavern trade was spreading venereal disease at a time when we didn't have a cure. The social ills were so serious, people looked to government to cut off the supply of alcohol. The demand, however, continued, even with prohibition. Citizens have never learned the bedrock virtue of temperance. This edition of the 2-Minute Warning continues our series on the 7 virtues, because at this time of national crisis, we Christians have got to lead the way back to character development. As Proverbs says, when it goes well with the righteous, the city rejoices. Temperance, my friends, is not something confined to scratchy black and white newsreels from the 1920s about people who wanted to deny themselves and others the pleasures of beer or wine. No, temperance has a deeper, more robust meaning. In the Sacrament of Evangelism, Jerry Root and Stan Guthrie call it the habitual ability to resist the enticement of immediate pleasure in order to gain a greater, though more remote, good. This reminds me of the verse in Hebrews 12 that talks about Jesus, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame. Friends, that's temperance, enduring now for a greater joy later. Root and Guthrie say, as courage is the ability to say yes to right action in the teeth of pain, so too temperance is the ability to say no to wrong action, even in the jaws of pleasure. Now, whatever you think about prohibition, I trust you will agree that we need more temperance. Temperance promotes the health and flourishing of the individual and of society. For want of temperance, societies fall apart, and then government has to step in, just as they did in the Prohibition era, with legislation to try to stop the chaos. But laws to protect us from ourselves are no substitute for the virtue of temperance. A big reason for our financial crisis today is the loss of the Puritan virtue of deferred gratification. While there are many other factors, too many of us were unwilling to say no to taking out a loan or mortgage we couldn't afford in order to gain a greater good later. This latest bout with temperance has produced us a disaster, has brought us right to the brink of disaster and brought us to the brink of enslavement to the state. Only a God-empowered return to virtue, to temperance, can save us. Come to colsoncenter.org for more resources on the virtue of temperance. I'm Chuck Colson. That's this week's 2-Minute Warning. And of course, you and I know that politics is nothing but an expression of culture. So where are we as a church to be concerned? We're to be terribly concerned with bringing Christian truth to bear in all of culture. Again, something Lewis talked about repeatedly, so that we can govern ourselves, so that there is a sense of virtue among the people, so that we can behave responsibly.